Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our storytelling session here at the World Storytelling Cafe. My name, if you don't know already, is Dave Tong, storyteller, sometimes known as the Yarnsmith of Norwich, and this fine fellow sitting behind me with the greying locks of an elderly badger and the wanton face of a wayward stoat is Mr. Trevor James, minstrel extraordinaire. And we are going to perform tonight a story of Sir Gawain, sometimes called Gawain, but also known long ago as the Hawk of May. And yet this story doesn't take place in spring or summer. In fact, it takes place at midwinter, at Christmas, long ago. Once, when fairy haunted bar and barn and dragons slept soundly in their caves, Arthur, King of the Britons, King of the West, he was keeping Christmas at Camelot. There he stood upon a raised dais, surrounded by his kin. For to his left sat his queen Guinevere, as fair as a May morning. And to his right sat Gawain, his nephew, a young knight new to his uncle's court, a young knight who drew his strength from the sun as Guinevere drew her beauty from its rays. For many days and many nights there had been feasting and merrymaking, but now it was late on New Year's Eve. And the while all around him sung songs and danced and made merry, Arthur stood stock still, alert to every sound, listening. For although the years were beginning to weigh heavy upon the old king, still he craved adventure, and was hoping for some New Year's magic this night. Fair or foul he cared not, only wishing that it would offer itself up to his court. Quietly at first, so that only the ancient king perceived it, the distant clatter of horse hoof upon cobblestone getting closer and closer, louder and louder, the horses' hooves kicking up sparks that flashed like the lightning that heralds a coming storm, getting closer and closer, louder and louder, louder now than trumpet, drum and merry din, until finally came the thunder, as the great oak door of Arthur's halls it split and splintered beneath iron-shod hoof and vicious blade. And in burst a strange and terrible rider, seated upon a mount that would have put all of Camelot's war horses to shame. He was long and mighty of limb, he was bare of foot, he was broad of shoulder, and he too had huge hands. In one of those hands he held aloft a holly bough to signify to all in Arthur's court that he wished no harm. Yet still many quaked at the sight of him, for in the other he grasped a cruel axe. The strange stranger was slim and slender of waist, a finely fashioned fellow was he, yet he bore a strange and terrible complexion, for that he was many shades of green. His long silken plaited hair, his big bushy beard were green. The cloak he wore, so too the tunic and hose, they were green. And yet his clothes, they were all adorned, decorated with many fine emeralds and other shiny baubles. So too his horse, for whilst the bold beast, its tack were also green, its garb and other finery were embroidered with birds, butterflies and bees. While gold thread, gold wire was twisted into the horse's mane and from its tail. Gold wire which flashed like the glint in a corner of the Green Knight's eye and from the edge of his vicious axe. Cocksure, the Green Knight, he rode up and down the full length of Arthur's halls, past rows of knights and their ladies, looking at each in turn for a mocking eye, as if staring deep into their souls, searching, yet sneering now, as if he found each in turn wanting. And then he spoke. I come not to fight with you this evening, Arthur, nor to feast with you, but simply to make some New Year's sport. For the New Year is upon us, and I seek a New Year's game. All I ask is a simple exchange of gifts, a strike for a strike, a blow for a blow. And he who can match me, he who can wallop as well as I, he shall win this axe. It shall be his to wield as he wishes. All who had fallen silent in Arthur's court remained silent, their heads bowed low. Even the crackle of the fire was reduced to a hiss as the flames shrunk back into the hearth at the sight of the strange and terrible man. Arthur's pride was pricked. He grew angry that none of his knights would take up the challenge. Wearing their shame about him as if it was his own, he leapt to his feet, meaning to strike the blow himself. Although know this, my friends, if Merlin had been in Arthur's court that night, if the wise wizard had been part of this tale, then perhaps it would have ended very differently. For if that sage old man had been there to whisper wise words in the aging king's ear, then perhaps Arthur would have snatched up the holly bough and struck the Green Knight with that. The Green Knight returning the blow, neither man suffering more than a few pricks from the holly's barbs, before sharing many a goblet of wine, and laughing long, loud, and lustily into the night. Alas, though, Merlin was not at Arthur's court, for as far as I know he was never part of this story, and so there was no one there to temper the king's rage. And so he snatched up the Green Knight's axe, ordering that he kneel, for that his head would be the price of bringing dishonour on Arthur's court that night. But up leapt Gawain, fearing for his uncle, wishing to prove his own virtue over blood, wishing to prove his own courage over kinship to the king. He stood up, he dropped to his knee before his uncle and said, Beloved uncle, nay, my sovereign lord, I beg of you, please let this moment be mine. And so it was. Gawain took up the axe. He bowed low to the Green Knight, showing him all due honour that one good knight should show another. The Green Knight returned the bow. He dropped to one knee, offering his neck, saying, Strike, strike now. Gawain needed no further telling. He heaved the axe heavenwards, bringing it down hard, so hard it cleaved the flagstones beneath, as the Green Knight's head fell from his shoulders and rolled about the floor, while ladies, and I should say some of the knights, screamed, all of them climbing up onto their benches to get away from the head as it rolled around and leered back up at them. And the Green Knight, he too stood up, lurching and lumbering this way and that, knocking all asunder, until stooping down he picked up his own head by the hair, blood still gushing from the vicious wound beneath. His eyes opened, fixing upon Arthur's nephew, and he spoke. Be sure to keep your oath to me, boy. A strike for a strike, a blow for a blow. Although know that our game will not end this day. Instead, seek me out at my abode, the Green Chapel, 1 year from this breaking New Year's Day. And still, with head in hand, the Green Knight, he rode screaming from Arthur's court. All who had fallen silent that night remained silent, their heads bowed low, until Arthur bellowed with laughter. For the new year was but newborn and had yet to cry out, and yet still he had witnessed the magic that he had so deserved, or he had so craved. He clapped Gawain hard upon the back, telling him to set his hard-won axe aside and share some wine, for after all, his quest it was 1 whole year away. sad and mournful tune for my good friend there. For is it not an unhappy truth that the older we get, the quicker time passes? And I look at no one in particular as I say that. Just know that for Gawain the year galloped by. He awoke every morning regretting his hollow victory. And with each passing day, Gawain, he felt older than his young years. For Gawain, lean winter quickly gave way to hopeful spring, but quicker still came the bounties of late summer, making all except Gawain forget the cold dark times that had been and gone, only to return soon enough. For soon enough there was a waft of wood smoke in the air, heralding autumn's return. And Gawain's mood, it grew as dark as the short darkening days of the season. His heart grew as grey and as grim as the grim grey days breaking without. And on All Hallows Eve it was, a feast was held in his honour. There he sat already clad in armour, the trim and trappings of a knight, eating and drinking his fill. Although this was to be no celebration, for no one expected the young knight ever to return. The following morning he took up his sword and a shield, a gift from his uncle, and a fine shield it was too, for on the inside it was painted with an image of the Blessed Virgin Mary. On the outside it was emblazoned with a golden pentangle, the five-pointed star, the endless knot, an ancient symbol with many different meanings to many different peoples from many different lands. But to Gawain it represented the five knightly virtues of generosity, purity, courtesy, compassion and honesty. Virtues that any knight must adhere to if they are to be successful in their quest. He mounted his horse Gringalet, already apparelled and ready to ride, and he galloped off alone from Camelot. Gawain, he travelled north, although skirting the very west of Arthur's realm, riding into dark places where few strangers ever trod, wending his weary way between gnarled and knotted tree, hacking, cutting, fighting, slashing his way through the cruel and twisted thorns that lay beyond. Because his journey, his quest was a grim one, for none he asked had ever heard tell of the Green Chapel or the mighty man who dwelt therein, and he was forced to do battle with many a fearful foe. From brutal boar and bear to wild woodwose and wicked worm, he fought and slew them all. But a far harder enemy to defeat still was Mother Winter, for she gnawed upon his bones. Mother Winter wrapped herself around Gawain like an icy cloak, her long bitter fingers reaching inside, tickling his ribs, chilling him to the bone. As each night he slept out beneath the stones on the cold bare rocks, his heart growing as hard and as heavy as the cruel stones that made up his unkind mattress. Know, my friends, that he became the most mournful of men, as on and on he rode each day, slumped over the neck of his horse, whilst carrion crow and other bedraggled birds perched upon the bare black branches above his head and piped piteously as Gawain passed by. On and on he rode, no longer caring which way he went, no longer knowing where he was, only half remembering the nature of his quest. On and on he rode, each night praying to the image of the Blessed Virgin, asking her help. But no deliverance came to Gawain. On and on he rode, until one night, late it was, he thought he heard distant music. It was being played upon a pipe. The music stirred something in Gawain's heart, rousing him from his nightmare, gifting him back his reason. It wrapped itself around horse and rider, drawing them closer and closer to a crenellated castle that was tall of tower, that was stout of bright white sturdy stone. It was set high upon a rocky cliff face, yet overlooking a beautiful valley. And Gawain, he recognised carols being played on Christmas Eve, and he was made welcome. For this was the castle of Sir Bertilac, a massive man who was as wide as he was tall. Imagine that. He was red of hair, ruddy of face. He wore a smile as broad as a lesser man's shoulders. Imagine that. But he was a good-natured knight, and all the happier knowing that he was to keep this Christmas with a knight from Arthur's Round Table. He ordered that Gawain he be bathed and dressed in the finest apparel that his wardrobes could muster. And when and only when the young man had been rested was he brought before Bertilac and his young wife. A beautiful young woman, thought Gawain, perhaps more beautiful even than Guinevere, certainly the other side of a newly minted coin. For whilst Guinevere was fair, Bertilac's wife, her hair, her eyes, they were dark. Her hair was as black as a raven's wing, yet her skin, it was as white and as bright as morning milk. And she put Gawain in mind of the first frosts of autumn. For after all, a light dusting of silver upon the tips of leaves of grass, upon berry, bush and bough, it can bring just as much joy as the high summer sun, can it not? Such was the joy that she brought Gawain that day, that he could scarce take his eyes from her, for she was comely to behold. Certainly more beautiful than the ancient dame who mirrored her every move, a withered old crone. Or Gawain had yet to see that she was far more ugly within than e'er she was without. The Lord and his lady invited Gawain to be their honoured guest for the rest of Christmas. Soon he found happiness once more. Soon Gawain was laughing long, aloud and lustily, the first time he had laughed that way in many months. For 3 days and 3 nights he sang, he ate, he drank, he made sport with the whole of Bertilac's court. Although in truth he enjoyed most of all making merry with Sir Bertilac's young wife. And so his happiness was tinged with shame, for that he did covet another man's property. Such was his shame, that his happiness disappeared as once more his thoughts turned to the unfinished quest. He went straightway to Bertilac and told him he must leave, for he'd yet to find the green chapel or the monstrous man who dwelt therein. But Bertilac, he began to smile, that smile as broad as a lesser man's shoulders. He laughed long, loud and lustily. "The Green Chapel," says he, "the Green Chapel, I know it well. It is an ancient place, and less than 2 miles from here." And so the old knight counselled the young knight that it was not yet time for fond farewells, inviting him to stay his hand and rest 3 more days and nights in Bertilac's castle, so he would be fully prepared for the ending of his quest. whilst Bertilac and his courtiers they rode out each day on the hunt. "But worry not, lad," said he, "for my wife and her ladies will keep you company. And because I too am fond of a New Year's game, how about this? Whatever I win this next 3 days whilst I'm out hunting in the woods, I will give unto you, as long as you, Gawain, promise to give me all that you win here in my castle." Agreed? Gawain agreed. Hands were shaken, backs were slapped, wine was shared, and the deal was sealed. And the following morning early, Gawain was awoken by the barking and baying of hounds, the holler of many a hunting hound, as Sir Bertilac and his men rode out on the hunt. But no sooner had they gone than there came a gentle tap, tap, tapping at Gawain's chamber door, and in crept Bertilac's young wife, for she too had come a-hunting in her way. She the huntress, Gawain hiding beneath the sheets of his bed like a deer gone to ground, was her prey. She passed over to the bed as silently as a moonbeam, and with tears welling in her eyes, she begged him not to leave, for that she had grown fond of Gawain, she feared for him. And was he not a kind and courteous knight? And should not a kind and courteous knight do anything that a lady asked of him? For not only did she wish him not to leave, she also wished that they could be as one this day. But for all Gawain wanted to please the young woman, he could not break his promise to go to the Green Chapel. Although it hurt his heart to hurt hers, although it hurt his heart to send that beautiful lady from his chamber, he told her that soon he must go, and so now must she. And so the young woman made to leave, but only after she'd taken hold of Gawain and gifted him a kindly kiss once upon the cheek. That night Sir Bertilac returned to his halls in triumph, carrying a hind upon his shoulders, one of many deer that had fallen beneath the hail of arrows that day, the others already butchered, already hacked and hewn, already bound and bundled for the pot. He cast its corpse upon the floor, saying, "Behold, my friend, a gift for you, all that I have won in the woods this day. And now you, Gawain, you must give me all that you have won here in my castle." Unwillingly, Gawain stepped forward. Embracing the master of the manor, he kissed him once upon the cheek. And even though the old knight asked the young knight from whom he had won such a prize, Gawain would not tell, for that was not part of their bargain. The following morning early, Gawain was awoken by the barking and baying of hounds, the holler of many a hunting hound, as Sir Bertilac and his courtiers rode out on the hunt. And no sooner had they gone than there came a gentle tapping at Gawain's chamber door, and in crept Sir Bertilac's young wife, for she too had come a-hunting in her way. She the huntress, Gawain hiding beneath the sheets of his bed like a boar gone to ground, was her prey. She passed over to the bed as silently as a moonbeam, tears gathering on her cheeks as she begged him not to go, for she had grown to love Gawain. She feared for him, and was he not a kind and courteous knight? And should not a kind and courteous knight do anything a lady asked of him? For not only should he not leave, she hoped that they could be as one that day. But for all Gawain wanted to please the young woman, he could not break his oath to go to the Green Chapel. Although it hurt his heart to hurt that young woman, although it hurt his heart to send that willing and wanton woman from his chamber, he told her that soon he must go, and so now must she. And so she made to leave, but only after she'd taken hold of Gawain and given him 2 kindly kisses to remember her by, one upon each cheek. Well, that night, again Bertilac returned to his halls in triumph, carrying the head of a wild boar upon his shoulders, the only one he had slain that day. For the brutal beast had put up a fearsome fight. Many an arrow had broke upon its tough, unyielding hide, before finally it fell prey to the edge of Sir Bertilac's sword and the tearing teeth of his 100 hounds. He cast the head upon the ground, saying, "Behold, my friend, my gift to you this day, all that I have won in the woods. And now you, Gawain, you must give me all that you have won here in my castle." Unwillingly, the young knight stepped forward, embracing the master of the manor. He kissed him twice, once upon each cheek. And even though the old knight wished to know from the young knight where he'd won such a prize, who it had come from, Gawain would not tell, for that was not part of their bargain. The following morning early he was awoken by the barking and baying of hounds, the holler of many a hunting hound, as Sir Bertilac and his courtiers they rode out on the hunt. But no sooner had they gone than there came a more urgent tapping at the door, and in crept Sir Bertilac's young wife, for she too had come a-hunting in her way. She the huntress, Gawain, hidden beneath the sheets of his bed like a fox gone to ground, was her prey. She passed over to his bed as silently as a moonbeam, and with tears spilling upon the covers she begged him not to go, for that she desired Gawain, and still she feared for him. And was he not a kind and courteous knight? And should not a kind and courteous knight do all that a lady asks of him? For not only should he not leave her, she begged that they could be as one that day. But for all Gawain wanted to please the young woman, he could not break his oath to go to the Green Chapel. Although it hurt his heart to hurt hers, although it hurt his heart to send that slim and supple creature from his chamber, he told her that soon, very soon he must go, and so now must she. And so she made to live, but only after she'd offered him 3 kindly kisses to remember her by. One upon his cheek, the third more passionate upon his lips. And only after she'd gifted him another present. It was the green girdle, the simple belt from around her waist, a love token for Gawain to remember her by. Although at first the young knight would not take it, for he had nothing else to give in return. But this day he would be more easily swayed when she told him of the simple gift's true power. As long as you wear this belt hidden beneath your robes and your armour, says she, as long as you tell no one else of it, not even my husband, the host, your host, know this, no harm will come to you. As long as you wear this belt beneath your armour, Gawain, you shall never be killed. And so it was Gawain took the belt, for after all, why shouldn't he meet some of the Green Knight's magic with a little of his own? Well, that night Sir Bertilac arrived back in his halls, and before he could speak, Gawain advanced. He embraced the master of the manor, giving him the 3 kindly kisses, one upon each cheek, the third more passionate upon his lips. But he did not give Bertilac the green sash, for that remained hidden beneath his robes that night. Bertilac stared deep into Gawain's eyes, as if searching his very soul, before stepping back and casting the tattered remnants of a fox upon the floor. Behold, said he, my gift to you. It is Reynard, a creature of little virtue, for it is a cruel and cunning creature. It is full of deceit. It is a miserable match for all that you have given me this day, for all that I won in the woods. And now the old knight asked the young knight from whom he had won the gift of the 3 kisses, although Gawain would not tell, for that was not part of the bargain. But Sir Bertilac didn't mind. He smiled that smile that was as broad as a lesser man's shoulders. He laughed long, aloud, and lustily. For knowing this was to be Gawain's last night in his castle, he feasted the young knight more finely than any night before. They sang, they danced, they ate, they drank their fill, before finally Gawain tumbled into his bed. Yet for all that wine, Gawain slept little that night, for on the morrow, New Year's Day, he must surely face his doom. He rose before dawn, and with one of Bertilac's servants to guide him, Sir Gawain, still with that sash hidden beneath his armour, wrapped twice about his waist, rode out past moor and snow-covered mountain, through wild and wicked woods, until at last they came to a narrow and twisting path, where the servant would go no further, telling Gawain that he should not go that way, for that many a knight had travelled that road never to return. But Gawain, he would not wear the badge name of courage. And so it was that the servant wished him well. He turned his horse, leaving Gawain to his fate. For at the end of that path was a mound of green, surrounded on three sides by ragged rocks and moss-strewn sturdy stone that rose up high into the murky mists that hung there, whatever the season. This was a chapel like no other. From a great crack at the back, from a ragged rent in the back of the rock, Gawain could hear the scraping of stone against steel, the sound of someone sharpening an axe. He called out, "I am here! I have come!" He dropped to one knee, offering his neck, as the Green Knight had done 1 whole year ago, as the mighty man came striding from the cave, swinging another axe, which was just as wicked as the cleaver that Gawain had won from him 1 whole year ago. The Green Knight bowed low to Sir Gawain, showing him all due reverence that one good knight should show another. "Strike," called Gawain, "strike now." The Green Knight needed no further telling. He heaved the axe heavenwards, but as he did, Gawain, he saw the blade as it flashed in the early morning sun. He flinched but a little, and so it was the knight stopped short, berating him, calling him coward, mocking him, calling him a frail, feeble fellow, little better than a beardless boy, a brat not yet ready to leave his mother's knee. "I flinched once," said Gawain. "No, I shall not flinch again. Strike now." For a second time, the Green Knight swung the axe high. He brought it down, but again he stopped short, holding the axe just above Gawain's head, commending the lad for his courage, saying that he was a fearless, feisty fellow. For this time he knelt as still as the stone that surrounded them, as still as a great stag oak that is rooted deep into Mother Earth. But Gawain grew angry. He said, "I have courage enough to kneel. Tell me, do you have courage enough to finish our game? Strike now." For a third and final time, the Green Knight hefted the axe heavenwards, bringing it down hard, so hard it cleaved the stone beneath. But the axe, it passed only close to Gawain, catching just the very edge of his neck, so that a small droplet of blood welled in the wound and dripped upon the axe, still embedded in the stone. Gawain leapt to his feet, already with his sword drawn, standing firm against his foe, saying, "Enough! Our game it is an end, a strike for a strike, a blow for a blow. So know this, If you strike again, be sure to strike true, for I shall surely strike back at you. You see, my friends, young Gawain, he had a way with words when he wanted. And some of you are smiling at that, some of you are even laughing, a happy coincidence, because no, the Green Knight, he began to laugh long, aloud and lustily as he leant upon the axe still embedded in the stone. He smiled a smile as broad as a lesser man's shoulders. And before Gawain's eyes, his complexion, it changed from green to red. Fear not, said the knight, for it is I, your friend and host these many nights past, Sir Bertilac, and it was I who came to Arthur's court 1 whole year ago, sent there by the ancient dame who shadows my wife. For she is none other than Morgan le Fay, your aunt, and also a witch who wears dark magic about her, as you or I might wear a coat to keep out the worst of Mother Winter's wicked winds. She sent me there to make mischief and to bring Arthur low, although I intended only to test your readiness to be a knight. For no, my friend, it is not enough for a warrior to be brave. He must also be generous, pure, courteous, compassionate, but above all, honest. And I do not think that you were as honest as you might have been. For on the first night of our game in my castle, you gave me all that my wife gave unto you, the single kiss. And for your truthfulness that night, well, I allowed you a flinch, a moment of cowardice on this breaking New Year's Day. On the second night, you gave me the 2 kindly kisses that my wife gave unto you. And for your truthfulness that night, again I stopped short on this cold winter's morn. But on the third night, Gawain, although you gave me those 3 kindly kisses, you did not give me my wife's girdle, which remains hidden beneath your armour this day. And so know this, my friend, for your deceitfulness that night, I nicked your neck with my axe. Sir Bertilac's words shamed Gawain. They hurt him far more than the wound upon his neck. It was true he had not kept to his part of the bargain. Reaching beneath his armour, he cast off the girdle, offering it back to Sir Bertilac, although the old knight would not take it, saying that Gawain had been punished enough, and that he could go forward without blemish or blame upon his name. For he had most certainly proved himself to be a brave and courteous knight, to have been so kind to the old lord's young lady, to have resisted such temptation, and to have come to this terrible place to meet such a terrible foe and fate. Take the green girdle, says he, and go in peace. And so it was, he thanked the old lord for his kindnesses, and Gawain, he rode out from the green chapel alone. And when at long last he arrived back at Camelot, Gawain told Arthur the very same story that we have shared with you this night. And Arthur, he laughed long, aloud and lustily, for he enjoyed a good story well told, as we hope that you have enjoyed the ancient tale that we have shared this night, or at least our version, I should say. But know this, we are not quite at an end. For Arthur decreed that from that night on, all of the knights of the Round Table should wear a green sash about their armour, to remind them of their virtues as knight, but also to honour Gawain, a reminder that there were none as courteous, that there were none as bold as he. Go on, my friend. You know you'll want to. Well, thank you everyone for listening to our stories and our music. Thanks from myself, Dave Tong, and Trevor James here. Remember our virtual hat because, even skinny musicians like him do need to eat, and me as well. I've lost a bit of weight. Don't forget that we have a CD out if you want to ask us about that. My good friend makes musical instruments like the little Pixie that he's been playing earlier. I've got some books for sale, so by all means, stay after and talk to us about that. If you can't stay, fare thee well. Goodbye.
Thank you.